Hey there. I would like to talk a little bit about baby names. So, this is one of the things that when you first get pregnant, everybody wants to know the gender. And then after they know the gender, they start asking you about baby names. So, what I did, I realized that I didn't want to deal with that drama of like baby names, gender, this, that, and the other. So, I did not tell anybody what I was thinking about in terms of baby names. And I copied this off of one of my friends. She told me that she had a baby name, she knew the gender of the baby, but she didn't want to tell anybody because she didn't want to be talked out of it. And I think that's like the best idea. I remember when I told my mom the baby, came and told my mom the baby's name, and she kind of right away said something that I kind of took as a criticism, but I was like, you know what? It's done. Like that time for criticism is over, right? The baby's here. This is the baby's name. And then I explained it, maybe like the meaning of the baby's name. And she just kind of like quickly just got over her high horse. So sometimes not having those conversations makes it a lot easier. So when thinking about baby names, I personally went through these, and so I'm just sharing my opinions. I thought about the significance, the pronunciation, the spelling, the popularity, and the meaning. So those are the 5 things that I think are really important. So I'll start off with significance. The same friend, coincidentally, who didn't want to tell anybody the names that she decided to do a mashup of her grandparents and I think her mom's name. So her baby's name is Mary Elza, and it was just coincidentally like this. Mary was her mom or her grandmother's name, and then Elza was like her husband's name. So they did a mashup, and she didn't tell anybody. I think one of the reasons why she didn't tell anybody is because she didn't want to be talked out of it, and she knew this is what she wanted, and it had personal significance. So why should anyone talk her out of that? But people do. People have an opinion about everything. It's like a heartbeat, right? We all have them. So next, the pronunciation. And so sometimes when you see a name, you might pronounce it one way versus someone else. So you might think it's the long A versus the short A. You might pronounce a J as a Y or Y as a J. You might have an accent in your name. So where was I? I just want to also make a comment. I'm a little under the weather, so my eyes might look a little puffy or small. But anyway, so pronunciation. My sister's name is Jasmine and my mom's name is Yasmin. So their names are spelled pretty much the same. Jasmine is Jasmine. My mom is Yasmin. So in my sister's name, we usually pronounce her S as more of a Z, Jasmine. And my mom's name, we pronounce her name as Yasmin. But sometimes people will do like reverse. And that's just something to be mindful about. You might have a letter that might have another pronunciation. And so are you comfortable with knowing that sometimes it's going to get mispronounced? Or do you want to go with something a spelling that for sure won't get mispronounced? But sometimes if you have like a more ethnic name, things happen and people will misspell it. So my name, for example, it's all A's. Each A is pronounced the same, but typically people add in letters, or they might not even hear the B and they might hear a V. So just things to be mindful about. Again, with spelling, so you might choose a name that has multiple spellings. So for instance, the name Sean, there are 3 popular spellings and there are some more creative versions of spelling that name. So that's something also you want to be mindful about. How do you want to spell this name? So I know when I picked out my son's name, I want to spell his name with like two A's. And my husband's like, no, just one. So all right. And then my cousin, I remember saying like, oh, I wanted to spell it with 2 A's. And she was like, well, with my son, people always drop the last A. Like she also has 2 A's in his name. And people always forget like the extra A. And one of my friends tells me that all the time, but people forget like the extra H. So just things to be mindful about. Sometimes you want this like cute, unique spelling, but you're really just thinking about like, oh, this look really cute on like maybe the birth announcement, but like for the rest of their life, for 70 years or hopefully more, it might be a little obstacle. Okay, so we talk about significance, pronunciation, spelling, popularity. So names that are kind of like fads. So all of our names kind of have a shelf life in a way, right? So I was born in a time where a lot of people were naming their daughters after popular actresses. And so in my culture, which I have Indian background, a lot of people were naming their daughters after Indian actresses, and I happen to be named after an Indian actress. So it's kind of like, I know when I meet another Shabana, she's most likely going to be in my age range, plus 5 years or minus 5 years. The most times, for me at least, pretty much if I meet a Shabana, she's either 5 years older or 5 years younger, in that range. Because of the actress Shabana Azmi. And so you might see this with other names. So just think about like any popular pop musicians or singers. Could be either in your culture or, anywhere in the world. And you might see like a popularity spike in that. And in Hollywood, we see this, right? We'll see names of inanimate objects like Apple, North, those kind of things. And so like right now it seems really cool, like naming someone for like geography, right? Brooklyn, London, but it also is going to kind of probably have a shelf life. And in a couple of years, that might seem really outdated to name your child something like that. So just something to think about. And now we get to the last part. So meaning and ethnic background. For me, when I was naming my son, I wanted a name that was reflective of my background and my husband's background. We happen to be two different religions, but he was okay with us choosing a name that kind of reflected both of ours. So his name is more of a Western name. My name is more of an East Indian. It's also a popular last name for Middle Eastern folks. So he was okay with going with a more traditional kind of name. And that's not something that necessarily is going to be the same thing for you. You might be with someone and they might want a more Western name, or they might want a more Eastern name, or they might want a one-syllable name. So that's just something like you have to have those conversations. And sometimes those conversations could be really tough. So just remember, like, you both have opinions, and to hear each other out and why you want that name. So it could be a very stressful process, but have your research with you. And so when I went to him with a list of names, we went through the names, we went through some of the meanings, we went through the pronunciation, the spelling, and based on that, he took the name that he liked. Coincidentally, that name remarkably has the same meaning in Sanskrit as it is in Arabic. So my son's name means little king in both languages. And so it's really cool that I could just like say that, oh yeah, it means little king, and people really like that. They're like, oh, that really suits him. Or they'll you typically say like a nice compliment about his name. And yeah, that's a little bit about like meaning and ethnic background. But don't feel that just because, like, for instance, I'm East Indian, I'm Muslim, my husband's Hindu, that you need to have a name that's reflective of that. You could also have a middle name. Chances are one of your last names is reflective of that. So don't feel like you have to do that, or don't feel like you can't choose like another cultural background name. I know I like the name Maya. And Maya, coincidentally, is also like a name that's in the Spanish culture. It's also a name of a Hindu goddess. So sometimes you might find a name that it's not from your culture, but you like the significance, you like the meaning, you like, you might have an affinity for that cultural background or ethnic background. So those are things to think about when you're thinking about a name, and best of luck. Bye.